So you're new to Genshin, you do a 10 pull on the current banner, and while you don't get a 5-star, you do get 4-star Gorou. Now what do you get with Gorou besides somebody that Miko teased so much he approaches her like an enemy? Well, Gorou is a bow-wielding Geo user whose C6 makes him kind of like the Geo version of Sara. So in this video, we are going to look at Gorou. We're going to talk about what his skill and his burst does, a team for him, all of the things that somebody that is new to Genshin, or maybe just somebody that is new to Gorou, would like to know. So we are first going to look at the current build of the Gorou that we are using in this video. One, it might be a look at a future build for Gorou. In this case, it's not. But it might also be if this Gorou is hitting more than yours or doing a better buff than yours. That might be why. It might be the artifacts, might be the weapon. This should tell you why that is the case. Okay, so this Gorou is level 50 out of 60 with 7,000 max HP, 217 attack, and defense 435. That defense is one of the stats that we need to look for. That is one of Gorou's most important stats, is the defense. His crit split is 10 over 50 with 141 ER. That is another very important stat for Gorou. For weapon, he does have a level 1 Favonius Warbow. This Gorou was being worked on, but kind of got tossed to the side a little bit. So yeah, that's why it's level 1. But we'll talk more about weapons later in the video. For artifacts, he is running a 4-piece exile set. The artifacts are another thing that we will talk about further in the video. He is C3. Now, C3 is not going to change his playstyle too much. It's just going to decrease the cooldown of his skill for C1. For C2, it's just going to extend the amount of time that his burst lasts, and then C3 is going to be a normal one where it just increases the level of his skill. So it's not going to change his playstyle too much. And then his talents are going to be 1-4-1 because of that C3. So with all that out of the way, let's go look at his normal attacks, his skill, and his burst. His normal attacks are going to be relatively standard, and then his charge attacks are going to be Geo infused. Now, you're not going to see a mark above the enemy whenever they're hit with Geo because that's how Geo works. Side note, these particles that are coming up every so often from him just doing his normal attacks are from Favonius Warbow, not from anything having to do with Gorour himself. So now we're going to look at his skill. And what his skill is going to do is that it is going to do an AoE Geo damage, but I also wanted to point out that it's going to provide buffs to your active character depending on how many Geo characters you have in your party, which is why we have 3 in this party. 1 Geo character, which would be Gorour himself, does a defense bonus. 2 Geo characters increases resistance to interruption. 3 is going to increase Geo damage bonus. So to get that extra Geo damage bonus, we have 3 Geo characters in the party currently. So whenever you do use the skill, he's going to plant the flagpole into the ground, and any character inside of its AoE is going to be hit with Geo. Now you see this little mark above his head. This means that he is getting the buff. You can also see the arrows around him. If we change characters, that character is now getting the buff. If we go 2 seconds without being in that field, if the skill ends, or if we leave the field, we then lose the buff. However, Gorou's cooldown on his skill is 10 seconds, and his skill lasts for 10 seconds. So you do have a permanent uptime where as soon as the flag goes away, as soon as his skill ends, you can just immediately replant it again. So you'll have no downtime to where you cannot have his skill up. And now we're going to look at his burst. And what his burst is going to do is that it is going to do the same thing as his skill. However, it is going to follow you around. It is also going to do intermittent, I guess damage over time would be an okay word to use here, where you'll see that this enemy is going to be hit with a Geo instance of damage every 1.5 seconds. That is because of his burst. Now, if you have his burst up, you cannot use his skill. If you use his skill, it doesn't do anything because the burst does the same thing of the skill. So you can't like double dip. You can't plant the flag and have the burst and get double of all of the buffs. Something else that it does do is that any elemental shard that is within the AoE is going to be like sucked into the character on the field. So it does also make it easier to keep up a Geo shard shield, depending on whatever element, of course, that the enemy was affected with. It'll be much easier to keep those shields up because those shards will be moving towards your character on the field. Now, he does have 2 passes that anybody, all nearby party members' defense is increased by 25% after using his burst. So that is going to get up the defense much more than his skills. So it is important to use his burst as often as possible. His second passive is just going to increase his own personal damage. So he's going to be great at buffing your other characters, especially characters like Noelle or Ito that rely on defense. Now, for an artifact set for a beginner for Gorou, so I'm going to say either a 4-piece exile where he really wants the energy recharge to have his burst up more often. The 4-piece is going to help everybody else. However, you can do 2-piece exile, 2-piece defender's will, because defender's will is going to get up his own defense, which is going to increase the amount of buff that he is giving out. So if you do 2-piece exile, 2-piece defender's will, especially if you're going to have like Favonius Warbow on him, then this can be a very good set 2-piece and 2-piece for Gorou. On the main set of the artifacts is going to depend on what weapon you have, okay? Regular weapon, a weapon that is not Favonius Warbow, you're going to want to run Defense Sands or Energy Recharge Sands, Defense Goblet, and Defense Circlet. You're going to run defense all across the board, unless you want to have an Energy Recharge Sands. Definitely do that so that way you can use your burst more often. If you have Favonius Warbow, then you want to be running a Defense Sands, Defense Goblet, and Crit Rate Circlet because of the passive on the Favonius Warbow. Speaking of the Favonius Warbow, it is one of Gorou's best weapons, and you do get one for free upon clearing the Animo Archon quest, I believe. So, gets up your energy recharge, which is great, but also crit hits have a 60% chance to regenerate a small amount of elemental particles, which can regenerate energy for the character, can only occur once every 12 seconds. This is at R1. At level 90, 61.3%, which is a ton, and crits have a 100% chance to regenerate energy, and it can occur every 6 seconds. So at R5, this is going to be a very, very good weapon for Gorou to have his burst up a ton. Now, even at R1, even at level 1, it is still going to be good because there are not any good 3-star options for Gorou, because all of them get up crit rate, crit damage, or elemental mastery, or attack, or there's not too many weapons that you can get early game or for free that are going to get up energy recharge. So the Favonius Warbow is going to be Gorou's best 4-star weapon, and I believe it's his like second best weapon overall, actually. Now we are going to look at a team for Gorou. Now, the way that I make these teams is that we talk about it as if you only had free characters plus Gorou because you would have pulled them. And then after we look at this team, we will talk about a team where you might be later in the game, you might have more characters. That's going to be more of a team for other people, higher AR, stuff like that. So Gorou, Noelle, Kaya, and then like Geo Traveler. Now, we want 3 Geo characters so that way we're getting Gorou's maximum buffs. And then your other element, in this case Kaya, can be any character that can apply an element off the field. Kaya's burst does a fairly good job of that. It's also a very low energy cost, so it's not difficult to build it back up and just have it ready pretty much off of cooldown. And that will allow for a lot of shards to go around without having to have that character on the field. Gorou is going to be buffing Noelle. Geo Traveler at C6 is going to be buffing Noelle with crit rate. Kaya is going to be giving the off-field elemental burst, so that way Noelle can just go on field, go to town, get the defense boost from Gorou, get the crit rate boost from C6 Geo Traveler, and she is going to be our main damage dealer. She's also going to be healing the whole party, so that way you don't have to worry about health or anything like that. This is how a quote-unquote more standard Gorou team might go, where Gorou is just buffing your on-field damage dealer, right? Especially one that runs off of defense like Noelle or Ito or Albedo or Chiori. There are a lot of Geo characters that do scale with defense, so any character that scales with defense, Gorou is going to be able to buff fairly well. At C6, he can buff them even higher, but we're not really going to look at that in this video. Now, if you are further in the game and you have more characters, you can take out Kaya for a lot of other characters or Geo Traveler. You could take out Kaya for Zhongling and run a mono Geo team, which can be good. You could take out Zhongling and you could put in Farina. Farina and Noelle actually go together fairly well. You could then with this team take out Geo Traveler and put back in Zhongli. You could do a lot of things to where you are just still buffing Noelle, so that way Noelle is just doing even more damage, as long as you can keep the 3 Geo characters to get all of Gorou's buffs. That is going to be it for this video. If you do have any questions, be sure to leave it down in the comments. Myself or somebody else, be sure to answer it, and I'll see you in the next one.